Hello, welcome everyone to this webinar about using Listenwise for remote learning with elementary grades. I am Monica Brady-Myerov. I'm the founder and CEO of Listenwise, and I'm going to walk you through some easy steps and some quick fun activities to do. And I'm joined today by our Director of Curriculum, Marielle Palombo, who go ahead and introduce yourself as well. Your mic is on.
Good to be with you. I am a career educator, former teacher. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so I'm an educator and currently work to curate stories and develop lessons for Listenwise, among other things. So I'm glad to be with you today. I also am homeschooling my elementary school daughter, so I have been able to put my teacher hat back on this last month. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about how I've been using Listenwise with my second grader.
That's great. We want to hear who you are. Use the chat box, please. Tell us what grade you teach, where you are right now, what's the weather like where you are, what's your home teaching situation like. Anything you want to include in the chat box, we want to hear from you. If you can all please mute yourselves, though, that would be helpful because we want to hear your questions, but we want to make sure that we can hear each other as well throughout the presentation. And we really want this to be as much of a give and take as possible. So it's not, we want to answer your questions. We want to hear your feedback and your thoughts in the chat box. So please, throughout the presentation, just feel free to dive right in there and we will be monitoring it as we go. All right, I'm going to turn off my video and head into first talking about how you access Listenwise remotely. So what makes Listenwise so simple to access is the fact that it can be used on pretty much any device, a desktop, laptop, Chromebook, or a mobile device. And mobile device is key, I think, for many of our students who might not have the internet connectivity or might not have a dedicated laptop to their home learning environment. So you're able to, if they do have access to a phone, which again, in the elementary grades, they probably don't have their own smartphone, but they might be able to use their parent or guardian's phone to be able to access the technology and get onto Listenwise. So the other thing I wanted to go over was how easy it is, and actually I'm going to go to a nuts and bolts. I realize I skipped a slide around just the nuts and bolts of what Listenwise is, and I'm curious how familiar you are with it or not. I see we have some teachers from California, from New York, and you're all elementary grade teachers, which is great. So Listenwise is a collection of 2,000 public radio and podcasts, and they're all about 3 to 5 minutes in length. And they are chosen to be relevant to the curriculum you're teaching in the classroom as well as engaging for your students. Now, our elementary curriculum is fairly new. This is our beta launch of grades 2 through 5. So we're going to show you how to find that curriculum and then how to use it with your students. But one of the easiest things to do with Listenwise is get your students onto it through Google Classroom. So if you are single sign-on, you can import your roster, you can share assignments, you can do grade integration, and it's very, very easy. And I see we've got a teacher here from rainy Northwest Pennsylvania who is using Google Classroom as well. And I'll tell you, it's pouring rain in Boston right now too, where Marielle and I are. So we must be having the same weather system moving up the East Coast. One of the key things is once you create your account on Listenwise, and Listenwise is free, all of the platform is free during the school closures. There is a portion of Listenwise that will always be free for you, and that is all of the excellent current events that we're publishing every single day. But to get the most out of Listenwise in a remote learning environment, you really want to take a moment to create classes, enroll your students, and then start assigning them some activities. And we're going to walk you through some of how to do that. But I really want this webinar to be focused on giving you some quick ideas about how to use the platform, not an onboarding or a training. So to do that, I'm going to just pop right into one really quick start idea, and that is getting students engaged. You know, I understand it's so challenging under these circumstances to get the students to want to be online with you or completing assignments online when there are so many other distractions at home. So one of the easy ways to do it, and one of the easiest ways to share Listenwise, is through a share the audio link. So I've now just hopped over to the Listenwise platform to show you this. And I'm going to go into one of our recent current events. This is today's current event. And there are the main, every single story has the audio with an interactive transcript, which is a huge support for listening and for language learners, and especially for readers. So if I see we've got a couple second grade teachers on here today, this is an excellent way for them to hear and listen, hear and read at the same time. It's going to play a little bit.
Fewer cars on the roads and planes in the sky, the global slowdown is having a big effect on the environment. Carbon emissions are dropping, but by how?
And you can also slow that down over here with this toggle switch by 20% by clicking slower. Now, one of the easiest ways to share this audio with your classroom is this share audio button right here at the top. By clicking that button, it pops up this window which gives you a link directly to the audio. One thing to remember though is this audio doesn't have the transcript with it. You have to be logged in, your students need to be logged in and have been assigned the audio with the transcript in order to see it. But this is just a really quick start, easy way to get your students engaged in something without having to even put them onto the platform or explain how it works. So you could take something like the booming business at a toilet paper company, our national obsession right now with toilet paper, and some people hoarding it and being worried about getting it. It's a really interesting, entertaining story that I think all students would like. And you can just click share audio and get the link and take you directly to it. That is one really easy way to use the platform. Another easy way I'm just going to show you before I hand it off to Marielle is that we've added these really short, weird news selections. And this is meant to be very light-hearted stories that are just something that kids are really going to be engaged by and remember. And if you notice, we put the focus on the vocabulary because even though the story is only 30 seconds long, it has an incredibly rich level of academic language and vocabulary. In this story, it has the words visualize and residence. And you'll see that after we listen to it, we're going to look at the questions. We have a listening discussion, comprehension questions and discussion theme questions prepared for you that use those vocabulary words. So let's just give this one a listen because it's only 30 seconds and it's a lot of fun.
Good morning, I'm Noelle King. We know we're supposed to stay at least 6 feet apart from each other to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but it can be hard to visualize how far 6 feet is exactly. We've been told the length of a car, a large couch, a dining room table. Leon County, Florida came up with its own device. The county advised residents on social media to keep at least one large alligator length apart from one another. Florida will be Florida.
All right. So it gives you a chuckle, it gives your students something fun to talk about, and then you can use our listening comprehension questions to really dig on what are some ways to help people visualize 6 feet. What does visualize mean? What other things can you visualize? It's a good way to dig into some of these vocabulary words. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Marielle, and I'm going to go back to the presentation because she's going to talk through some of the listening protocols that she conducts when she is using Listenwise. So hold on one moment while I go back to the presentation and get to the listening protocol slide. Marielle?
Great. So I just want to reiterate the value of the reading along with the transcript while students listen. My daughter says that it really helps her focus. So in addition to having benefits to reading and listening, it also helps with understanding how words that you hear are spelled. It helps with sort of getting a sense of phrasing and fluent reading. So there are lots of advantages to reading while listening, in addition to just helping helping to focus and reinforce the content. So what I've been doing with my second grader is first, usually I ask her to listen to the story once from beginning to end. And then I ask her, just to get an idea of what it's about, then I ask her to listen a second time using the listening organizer to take notes. And I will add that I learned through my experience that it's important to explain how to take good notes. Kids who have not been taught note-taking may try to grab too much text at once, so I had to explain just keywords and phrases. You don't have to write down everything, just things you think are important. So that's sort of an important preface if you haven't already done that with students. And it's a little bit different remotely, but you know, you can do it in a lesson via video, you can explain it in text, but it's good to make sure they know the difference between taking notes and answering listening comprehension questions in complete sentences, for example. Then I ask her to answer the questions, the listening comprehension and discussion questions, and I sometimes adapt them a little bit if I feel like there's words that could be simplified for her. Luckily, the platform, one of my favorite features of the platform is that you can use the questions as they are. You can modify them. You can add or delete questions. There's a whole lot of flexibility for personalization, both for a whole class or for individual students or groups of students.
And Marielle, I'm just going to show that. Yeah, I'm going to show that happens in this create assignment tool is where the flexibility happens. There are some boxes that are already checked. For instance, it's always checked to allow your students to view the transcript. You can uncheck that box. And there's a text help toolbar that's gives some screen reading support where words can be read out loud or defined in English and Spanish, as well as a picture dictionary. Here are the listening organizers that Marielle was referring to, one example. So this is something you could use with your students to ask them to write down questions and some of the answers in the chart as they listen to the story. And then it is preloaded with the listening comprehension questions and the discussion theme questions. And you can delete, you can add, you could create your own question. So highly personalizable, that's a word, I'm not personal, don't think it is.
Yeah.
But, personalizable is a word. Wow, okay, I learned something today.
Well, I mean, we all know what you mean anyway.
Exactly. All right, and then you're done. And then you're able to assign it to a class with a due date, or you can assign it to individual students. All right, so Marielle, I'll just go back to the lesson and just as you talk through it.
Sure. So another feature that I really like, so I have her listen once, then listen again, take notes, and then answer the questions, listening again as needed. And it's important for students to understand that either in the note-taking or the question answering, they can pause as needed and catch up with their writing. Especially for elementary students, sometimes it can take a while to get their answers out. So they can always pause the audio and restart it again, or replay, in fact, if they didn't catch it the first time. So after she does those steps, I ask her to submit her answers to me, and then I respond through the platform. And this is a really great, another great feature. You can go ahead. I'll go into the details about that in a second. But finally, I usually ask her to revise based on my feedback and then sometimes take the quiz afterward. You can modify this protocol. This is just, sometimes I do, sometimes I, might, not give the quiz or go to the quiz before the questions. You can vary this as needed. There's enough material for all of this, which could take, quite a good chunk of learning time, or you can vary it depending on what you need. So here's an example of questions that, let's see. So can you back up?
Sorry, yeah. Her first response?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but all the way up to back to the science and ELA.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so this is a lesson, Animal Superpowers. The lessons include a little bit more support, instructional support, than the current events, but they all have the same core features of a synopsis, the audio with sort of the interactive transcript, and the listening comprehension discussion questions. The listening organizers come with the lessons, like this one, Animal Superpowers. So this is what the teacher sees when assigning the story. So if you go to the next slide, Monica. This is what the student sees once the story is assigned. So in this case, I would have assigned these external materials. You can see the text help toolbar, which Monica referenced earlier. You can see the interactive transcript, and you can see the teacher instructions. So I give her the instructions that I just shared with you in that box to let her know what to do with a particular story. So you can go to the next slide, sorry. So this is an example of her listening organizer for the Animal Superpowers story. She took some notes, and then she answers the questions in complete sentences. And again, it's really up to you to determine what kind of answers you expect, what your expectations are, to make those clear, and to give feedback based on those expectations. So you may or may not want them to use complete sentences. There's an opportunity to teach all kinds of writing skills through this medium. My daughter finds this writing in response to interesting, engaging stories to be more motivating sometimes than just sort of a free write. So you can really think about this as a tool for not only listening, but for reading and writing, and potentially speaking if you have conversations about the discussion questions in a face-to-face video chat, for example. So next slide, please. So I'm going to dig in a little bit to the feedback tool. This is an example of feedback on that same lesson. So you can see I assigned her 5 questions, and this is just a snapshot of the last couple plus my feedback. The first question showed to me clear understanding of one of the, some of the key ideas in the story, and the details as well, with sort of supporting evidence from the story there. The second question I asked her to elaborate on a little bit. She answered what kind of animal she wanted to be, but she didn't explain why and what superpower she would want. So I just gave that feedback and asked her to submit again. She has made clear, and I always have felt this as a teacher as well, that providing some positive feedback that's specific and helpful, what to do more of, is really useful, and then also something to work on. So that's one example, and then I'll take you through this sort of revision process with another story, and you can see how that played out. So when I go to the next slide.
Before we do that, I want to pop over back to the platform and play some of this, which is what
okay.
Pull up the next story you're going to use, and before you do, I'm going to take them to the advanced search tool, because I think this is another really important feature I want you to be familiar with and be able to use easily, so that you can find the right level story for your student as well as the right content. So a couple things I'm going to point out here. You can search it by subject. This is very new. It's from Lexile, which you're probably all familiar with the Lexile text level. Lexile Audio Measure is a brand new measure. It's a third-party validated tool that tells what level the audio is to listen to. So if you click on that question mark here, it goes into a lot more detail that you can review about how this tool, which was scientifically developed scale, it was developed on the same scale as the text measurement, but it's very different. And you have to remember, students can listen 2 to 3 grade levels higher than they can read. So you're going to see Lexile audio measures that your third graders can read can listen as a 725 to 1060, which might be very much higher than they could read. But audio is easier to digest when you're a pre-reader learning how to read than it is as you get older. So you can learn more about how to find the best level for your students there, or you can do the easy way too, is just say, look, I'm with elementary students. I want to have low stories, and I want elementary grade lessons, and I'm going to want both a mixture of current events and lessons. So I can do a return on that and just get dozens of stories to use. Some of them are current events, and some of them are lessons with more support. So Marielle, tell me the name of the next one you're going to.
Peacock. Yeah, if you put in Peacock, you'll get the
Okay.
Ninja Peacock Takeover story, which is a current event with a quiz.
Okay. So you'll see here that a couple of key features. It's a low story. It's 870. And if you're wondering what 870 means exactly, you can click this up and say, okay, well, this is good for third grade. It's a little high for second, definitely third and fourth grade. But third is the sweet spot. So that's how you can use that measure. You can create an assignment, or you can create a quiz, which we'll show you in a moment, because that's also very, very easy. And it's a highly engaging story that has sounds of peacocks. Let me just play a little bit at the top.
Yeah.
Like these stories chosen for elementary students are a lot of fun to listen to.
Miami's Coconut Grove neighborhood is known for its leafy tropical streets and its laid-back bohemian feel. That's probably why it attracts so many people and so many peacocks. Hundreds of the exotic birds strut through the city's oldest neighborhood, with the males displaying their magnificent plumage. The courtship displays attract a lot of tourists and stop a lot of traffic. The peacocks also devour flowers, they poop everywhere, and I can attest to this, they screech from rooftops at 3 in the morning. Some people.
All right, so a lot of fun sounds. These stories are very engaging. A lot of the rest of our content on the platform, a lot of it comes from NPR. But for our younger listeners, we've also been sourcing from podcasters who are making stories specifically for the grade, your students' grade ranges. And Marielle, what grade is your daughter in?
She's in second.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Tell me how you use.
Sure. I'll add too that Monica pointed out that the Lexi levels can be a helpful guiding post, but you should know also that the platform, all of the built-in supports in the platform can potentially allow students to understand stories that might be more difficult for them to understand on their own. So the things like the read-along transcript, the fact that they can control the play and replay as needed, as well as the instructional supports. So this story actually worked really well for my second grader. She got the quiz completely correct. So it's at her level. So that can also give you a sense of what level is the right level once you have assigned a few quizzes and you kind of got a sense of whether they're getting about 3/4 or more correct, then they're probably listening at a good level. So this story, if you want to actually, okay, so Monica's showing the quiz. Do you want to talk about the quiz while you're there?
Yeah, while I was there, I think it's good to point out that
sure.
This is also a super easy way to assign a Listenwise listening activity, because it's it's multiple choice and it's auto scored. So I'm just going to go through and take a lot of guesses here, but we are covering key strands of listening, including what is the main point of the story, what is the main idea, what is the vocabulary word in context, can you make an inference based on this passage? These are all things that, as you know, are key in reading as well. And then once the student submits it, they know right away how they've done. So in a remote learning environment, this is so important because the student has immediate feedback without you having to do anything. But what you can do then is look in your class assignments and your classes or your assignments and see that everybody completed the quiz or not. So you get a summary report and you can keep tabs on, who is performing well at what listening strand, as well as whether they're just completing the quiz. If that's just your own goal, is to just get them listening to something fun and show that they've done it. Then this is a great way to do that.
And if you like to make use of the data and you sort of see collectively that as a class, vocabulary and context seems weak, you can give some strategies for trying to use context to understand new words. So you can use that data to inform instruction as well.
Okay, should I go back to the presentation or back to the?
Yeah, go back to the slides. I want to show you what the feedback looks like.
And I see we've got one of our attendees has been using Listenwise, but only with 6th graders, and she hadn't looked at the lower levels. So yeah, I'm excited to tell you, that these are brand new, and we have a lot of exciting things for grades 2 through 5. So check them out.
So here's an example of this. I think might have been her first story. And so she answered the questions. I assigned 7 questions, and she as I read the responses, a few things jumped out at me. You might want to give feedback based on a particular goal. It could be a content related goal. It could be basic listening comprehension. It could be some writing skills that you want to focus on. So here I said, it jumped out at me. I said that I could tell from her responses that she really understood. I noted one question that I thought her answer was particularly creative and insightful. And then I asked her to make sure each sentence started with a capital letter and that there were periods between sentences. And she was, one thing I learned was that she didn't know how to use the shift key. So we fixed that, and now she knows how to do it. But it was easy enough for her to go back and fix those and create complete sentences. And fix those comma splices once I asked her to. So that was just an opportunity to teach that particular skill since it presented itself. And then I asked her to, I noticed that she had quoted directly from the story for one of her answers, and I wasn't sure if she really understood it. And so we talked about it, and I asked her to use her own words because that showed me that she could understand. So that was feedback that I gave her in this case. And then I could reinforce it the next time I saw her doing it in the next story. She was very clear that she was applying that feedback. So building on those skills over time is really helpful.
And I want to say too, Marielle, sorry to interrupt, but you can also reassign the quiz. So there's an opportunity to retake that as well. So if students you feel they just want to, like Marielle suggested, give them a chance to listen once, maybe take the quiz and say, then just listen again and retake it. It's about practicing.
Yep. So if you want to go through the next couple of slides, I think. So this is what, this is what she sees then. So my comment shows up right at the top of the story with my request for revision. And then if you go to the next one, you'll see she changed her response to question 5 as requested, and I added new feedback at the top. I said, I can tell that you really understand when you use your own words, and that again, positively reinforced her fixing of her complete sentences because it makes it easier to read. So if you go to the next slide, there's a blog post linked here, and you'll get these slides afterwards, that explains both sort of how to use the feedback tool, and also offers some guidance on what makes good feedback. It's really an opportunity to make of it what you will, and it's very flexible again, and you can focus on whatever instructional goals you have for whole classes or for individual students. So we are
almost out of time already. Wow.
We are.
Do you have any other questions? Anybody who's with us today? We thank you all for coming. We are going to send you this presentation, and you can learn a little bit more about the Lexile audio measures, some other sample activities, going further with quizzes and lessons. So it'll just walk you through a few more of the points that I quickly showed you today, as well as how to empower student learning, and also parent enrichment guide, because I know parents are really desperate to also get some advice on how to use some of these resources that the kids might be used to using in the classroom already. And just a heads up, we do have a podcasting PD webinar tomorrow at 1 o'clock that you'd be welcome to join as well. So I'm going to leave it on this. Thank you, Marielle, for joining me today. And thank you, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it.